I had to finally face an uncomfortable truth. I still loved her. Probably always would. But did she feel the same way about me? The more I thought about it, the more I realized I wasn't even sure I knew what love actually meant. If she came to me and said she wanted to keep the marriage going, but that her fun should remain reserved for her clientele, along with the occasional Spencer or Rudolph, then naturally, that would be the end of us. Even if she were the best cook in the city and had a mind sharp enough to keep up with the best of them, I couldn't, in good conscience, call that a marriage. Then again, suppose the roles were reversed. Would I leave her if I were the one getting a green light for all the pleasure I wanted, no strings attached as long as she still came home to me? I doubt I'd walk away. Sure, I'd take the deal, call it an elite all-access pass to Ribald, but I'd still want another woman to share the rest of married life with. Someone to come home to. I don't want to come back to silence and empty rooms every evening. Hell, it's not even a home, it's just walls and a roof. Sometimes I surprise myself with how deeply I think about this stuff. But one thing started to cut through the fog. We couldn't keep going like this. She was out there living a life I was pretending not to see, and I was playing dumb, going along with it as if ignorance would protect me. If we were going to have even the slimmest chance of making it, she'd need to walk away from her current line of work. And yet my pride can't handle the idea of being the town's most well-known fool, husband to the most liberated woman in town. I hate that I'm so sensitive about this. I hate how exposed and small it makes me feel. So yes, she'd need to give up that lifestyle. I just don't believe she ever would. I also doubt she'd agree to pack up and start fresh somewhere far away. Eventually, I drifted into sleep. Next chapter. I woke to the smell of breakfast wafting from the kitchen. Still groggy, I got out of bed, ran through my usual morning routine, showered, shaved, dressed, then headed downstairs. Haida was there, wrapping up her work. I poured myself a coffee, gave her a good morning kiss, and took a seat at the table. She'd made us both Denver omelets, bacon, toast, the works, everything just how I liked it. And it hit me again, that strange disconnect. How could this kind, attentive woman, the one smiling at me over breakfast, be the same person I was struggling to understand? I thanked her for the meal and started eating. As always, it was excellent. When I finished, I placed my plate in the sink and returned to the table, facing her squarely. She paused mid-bite and looked back at me. "Everything okay, honey?" she asked. "Showtime," I thought. "No more delays." "We need to talk, Haida," I said, keeping my voice calm and steady. She took a few more mouthfuls, then dumped the rest of her plate into the trash and rinsed off the dish. She returned, grabbed her purse. "I'm serious," I said, leaning forward. "We need to have a real conversation, about all of it." "You're right," she replied, "but not this moment. I've got things I need to take care of. Meredith's expecting me." She was already heading for the door. "Damn it, Haida," I snapped, the anger breaking through. "This is our marriage we're talking about. You really think Meredith's more important than that?" She paused and turned around, meeting my eyes. "Look, sweetheart," she said, her voice soft but firm. "I know this matters to you. I do. But I've got obligations today. I'll be home late, but if you're still up, we can talk then, okay?" She opened the door. "Love you." Before I could reply, she stepped out, and the door shut behind her. "Yeah, me too," I muttered into the silence. I sat there stunned. Was she really that indifferent to our relationship now? It sure seemed like it. God, we hadn't even made it to the 2-year mark. Well, closer to 2.5 years, if you start counting from when she began working at Paradise Bold. I dragged myself into the office and tried to push through the day. It didn't go well. My secretary stopped by more than once, checking to see if I was still functioning. By lunchtime, I'd had enough. I told them I was calling it early and stepped out. I knew I needed to talk to someone about all of this. But who could I turn to? Then it came to me. My sister Leanne was an attorney. If there was anyone I could count on to help me make sense of this mess, it was her. I dialed her office, and within seconds I was speaking to her directly. "Hey there, little brother," she answered warmly. Leanne was 3 years older than I was, and easily one of the sharpest minds I'd ever known. Right after our father, of course. "Do you have a moment?" I asked her. "I really need to talk." "That serious, huh?" "You're reaching out to your big sis?" she teased. "Yeah," I said. "This something you'd rather keep private?" she pressed. "Afraid so," I replied. There was a pause on the line. "All right," she said. "Come over now. I'll cancel my afternoon schedule. We'll get to the bottom of this." "Thanks, Leanne." "I can't tell you how much this means," I said. I left my workplace, telling the front desk I'd be out for the rest of the day, maybe longer, and headed to her office. When I arrived, her assistant brought me straight in. She looked up as I entered, stood from her desk, walked over and gave me a warm sibling hug. Then she guided me to the couch along the far wall. "No offense, Merle, but you look awful," she said bluntly. "What's going on?" "Is this about Haida?" "It is," I admitted, "and it's tearing me apart." "Start from the beginning," she said. Leanne sat and listened carefully while I laid it all out. The way I discovered Haida was working at Paradise Bald, how she had been spending the money she made on lavish jewelry and collectible coins, her affairs with both Spencer and Rudy, everything. "Let me get this straight," Leanne said slowly. "Haida, your wife of 16 years, the woman you've shared your life with, is the one behind this whole secret double life? And she managed to keep it hidden from you for years?" I nodded. "Yes," I said in a hushed tone. She stared at me silently for a moment, then asked, "And now you're unsure of what to do next?" "Something like that," I muttered. Without warning, she reached over and gave the back of my head a smack. I looked at her, stunned. "Are you serious?" she snapped. "Your wife is out here working as a prostitute, and you're sitting there not knowing what step to take." She pointed a firm finger at me. "I'm saying this out of love, okay? You're my little brother. But were you born clueless, or did you take a course in it?" I blinked at her, speechless. Leanne had always been straightforward, but she'd never spoken to me this harshly. "Think of this as your reality check," she said. "Prostitution is against the law in this state, and who knows what else she's tangled up in. You said she was making serious money. Did she ever declare it to the IRS?" I shook my head. "No idea," I said. "She never once brought it up in the past 2 years. The manager at Paradise Bald told me they classified her as some sort of independent contractor, something like Customer Perquisites LLC. He also mentioned they didn't withhold taxes. He suspects she registered a business to avoid using her social security number." "You mean to tell me you haven't sat her down and confronted her properly?" she asked. "I tried earlier today," I said, "but she brushed me off, said she was busy, and walked out." "Okay then," Leanne said. "Here's what I'm going to do. I don't specialize in family law, but I've got contacts in town who do." She stood and picked up her phone. "I'm going to get you a consultation this afternoon, and I'll go with you." "Thank you, Leanne," I said, genuinely relieved. "Of course," she said, already dialing. "I've got your back." As she made the call, I sipped the coffee her assistant had brought in. A couple minutes later, she rejoined me on the couch. "You lucked out," she said with a smile. "I just got off the phone with Wilbur Jennings. Best family law guy around here. He's got a slot for us today, and he's already pulling in a private investigator." "If we head out now, we'll make it just in time," she said. "It's close enough to walk, so no need to worry about parking," she added as she pulled on her jacket. I followed her out the door without a word. Roughly 30 minutes later, we were sitting in the front office of his workplace. "Leanne," Wilbur greeted warmly, rising to shake her hand. He appeared to be in his mid-50s, solid build, a touch of silver at his temples. "It's been ages. Is this your brother?" "Yes, Wilbur," she replied. "This is Merle." Wilbur offered me a firm handshake, then gestured to another man nearby. "This is John Williams," Wilbur said. "He's a private investigator I trust and hire often." John was short and thick-set, dressed in a wrinkled, unremarkable suit. We all exchanged handshakes before taking seats. "So I hear you're dealing with some family trouble," Wilbur said, leaning forward. "Go ahead. Tell me what's going on. We'll see how we can help." I recounted the full story again, just as I had with Leanne earlier. I couldn't help wondering how many more times I'd need to repeat it before something changed. Wilbur and John both scribbled notes as I spoke, occasionally glancing at each other. "So your wife, Haida, is the redhead who works over at Paradise Bald?" Wilbur asked. "That's right," I confirmed. "You're absolutely sure?" "Positive," I said. "I even had a conversation with the club's manager." Is there an issue? Wilbur leaned back in his chair and exchanged a look with John before replying. I'm going to be completely straightforward with you, son, he said. As much as I'd like to help and take your case, I can't. There's a potential conflict of interest. What kind of conflict? I asked. Are you representing her? Leanne added, frowning. No, nothing like that, Wilbur replied, but I've used her services on a few occasions. You mean you hired her? Leanne asked, her tone tightening. I felt my stomach twist as he gave a solemn nod. Yes, I'm sorry. I didn't know she was married. She's never worn a ring and, well, I'm not married either, if that matters. I really am sorry. Wilbur sighed heavily and continued. To be honest with you, Merle, she's probably been involved with half the divorce attorneys in town. Maybe more. A few judges, definitely the mayor. And if the rumors are true, even a state senator or two. Some even say she's had encounters with the governor. I thought prostitution was illegal here, I said. It is, Wilbur replied, but she never accepted direct payments. She called it stress counseling. It's a technicality, sure, but one that's worked for her. I leaned forward, tense. So if I go through with a divorce, what am I up against? Wilbur gave a slight shrug. To put it bluntly, you're screwed. He continued, ticking off the issues. First off, this is a no-fault state. You can't bring up adultery in court. It's irrelevant. Even if you could, you admitted your marriage was open from the start. He paused and gave me a serious look. Second, this is a community property state. That means she's entitled to half of everything. Bank accounts, savings, your home, retirement funds, the whole package. But we don't have kids, I said. So there wouldn't be any alimony, right? Not necessarily, he said. You could still be ordered to pay spousal support. Alimony? I said, incredulous. She's made more in the past 2.5 years than I've earned in my life. Why should I owe her anything? Do you have proof of her income? Any 1099s or tax records? Nothing, I admitted. Not a single document. Well, there it is, Wilbur said. She could hire the top attorney in the state, rack up a mountain of legal fees, and have the court force you to cover the costs. He leaned in slightly. There are plenty of ways she could drag this out. Take counseling, for example. It gives her time and weakens any case you try to build. So what am I supposed to do? I asked, desperate. He thought for a moment. If it were me, I'd just disappear. Don't tell her where you're going. Don't give her any information. Just vanish. Give her some time to stew. He tilted his head. Maybe she'll use some of her money to track you down and file the papers herself. I can't do that, I said firmly. I have a job here. Clients. I'm not the type to run. John suddenly spoke up. I might have an idea. Everyone turned to face him. What kind of idea? Leanne asked. How about I tailor for a while? He offered. Me and my crew can dig around and see what we find. I've still got connections in Vice. They've been itching to take a closer look at Paradise Bold for quite some time. From what I'd gathered, that place was a master at slipping through legal cracks. They always seemed to get a heads up whenever someone from the Vice squad tried to go in undercover. But they didn't know me, or the people I had working on my side. Maybe it was time someone gave the cops a real shot at shutting the place down. How long would something like that take? Leanne asked. Maybe 2 weeks tops, John replied. That is, if you're willing to cover the cost, he added, giving me a pointed look. I took a moment, weighing my options. It wasn't going to be cheap, but I needed answers. Anything, really. All right, I said, let's go for it. I'd been saving up for another vacation cruise, but after everything that had happened, the cruise could wait. Perfect, he said, handing me a business card. He popped open his briefcase and pulled out a form. I filled it in, signed it, and gave him a check for the upfront payment. Just let me know who'll be acting on your behalf, he said. I'll make sure they get a full report once it's done. Look, Merle, I'm sorry I can't do more, Wilbur said, reaching out his hand. You've done what you could, I replied, shaking it. Thanks for giving me your time. Leanne and I stood up to leave. She turned to Wilbur before saying anything else. If I were you, Wilbur, I'd steer clear of that place from now on, she said. We both know what's really happening there. I'd hate to see you lose your license over it." He gave a small nod. "Understood, counselor," he said. We walked out and headed back to her office. Once inside, Leanne turned to me. "Merle," she said, "I know this has already been tough on you, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. There's another attorney I want you to talk to. She's good, but she and her husband are off in Europe for the next 2 weeks. When she's back, I'll give her a call." "Okay," I said. "In the meantime," she continued, "you need to stop wallowing. Get serious. Start digging. See if you can find any old tax returns or other paperwork. And try to stay composed around her. I get it. She lies like it's second nature. But don't let her get to you. And don't go after any of her flings. I am not bailing you out of jail. Understood?" "Got it," I said. "Good. And if things spiral, don't hesitate to reach out. Ron and I have a guest room. It's yours for a few nights if you need it." She paused, her voice softening. "We'll get through this. One way or another." "Thanks, Leanne," I said. "Really." She smiled, pulled me into a quick hug. "Anytime," she said. I left her office feeling more resolved than I had in days. I headed home, determined to uncover anything that might give us leverage. I figured I had a few hours to work with. Lately, Haida hadn't been showing up until long past midnight. I started searching more thoroughly, even climbed up into the attic. That's when I saw it. A surprisingly new-looking storage box, the kind you'd see in an office full of documents and records. Inside were multiple folders. A handful of them held small envelopes, each containing DVDs. I could already guess what was on them, but I took a few out anyway, planning to check them later. Then I found something more interesting. Tax records. Forms like 1099AS, completed 1040S, and a bunch of other documents tied to self-employment. What really stood out was the business name listed, Customer Perquisites, LLC. According to the records, she had reported earnings of almost $1.5 million in a single year, and nearly $2 million the following year. I blinked. That kind of income didn't come easy. She had to be working overtime for that. But still, where did all that money go? It couldn't all have disappeared into old jewelry and antique coins. Digging further, I came across a recent bank statement from Fidelity Bank Limited in the Cayman Islands. Her balance? Just over $40 million. Jesus. I couldn't shake the thought that she was planning to vanish, and that this was her escape fund. But that wasn't even the end of it. Tucked away in another folder was what looked like a contract. As I read through it, the reality became clearer. Haida wasn't just moonlighting as an exotic dancer and escort. She was a celebrity, with a deal to star in 10 full-length films. All in, I guess, I muttered. No wonder she was always traveling. I kept going, eventually finding a medical file, bills and forms dated about 14 years back. One record stood out. Haida had gone in for a procedure, marked simply as a C. Then it hit me. An abortion. She had undergone a 2-ball ligation to ensure she wouldn't have more children. Only then did I finally understand why we never had any. She had always paid for everything in cash, so I'd never come across a receipt or seen any charges on our financial records. Was she deceiving me even back then? I recalled the light-hearted teasing after I returned from my first business trip out of town. I remember saying, "I hope you didn't flirt with every guy at the club," when she told me she'd gone to Rye Bald in my absence. That had been early in our marriage. "No, silly. Just a couple. But none were even worth it." "Not a single one," she added with that playful tone. Over the years, she made similar snide remarks whenever I traveled. Eventually, I just stopped asking. But now, everything seemed to be coming into focus. And that wasn't the worst of it. I uncovered a series of calendars dating back 14 years. Marked dates caught my eye. They matched trips I'd taken for work. Each marked date had amounts written beside them. Much like the numbers I'd seen on the kitchen drawer calendar, some of the sums were outrageous. Certain days were marked with letters. An S appeared on a few. Could that have stood for Spencer, the friend I once trusted? Others bore an R, and my gut told me those were times she'd met up with Rudy. Of course, they could stand for anyone. Several entries were cryptic, codes I couldn't decipher. Some were labeled with an M, which I assumed stood for the days she was with me. Disturbingly, a few entries had more than one letter, like both M and R. The idea that she'd been with me shortly after seeing someone else made me feel physically ill. Tucked behind the calendars, I discovered a slim ledger book, a detailed record of transactions. It seemed she began keeping it after 2019, which explained the absence of recent dates on the kitchen calendar. It contained notes about counseling appointments and periodic, much larger payments every few months. I didn't do a full tally, but just glancing through it, I estimated she could have made upward of $2 million annually. Hidden further in the drawer were envelopes stuffed with cash, about $6,000 in total. There were folders, too, packed with photos of Haida. Some captured her performing on stage. Others featured her with one or several men. I couldn't understand why she'd left those pictures in that box while putting others in the kitchen folder. I gathered everything: applications, medical forms, tax documents, and a contract with Paradise Bullied Productions, and brought them into my home office to make copies using our printer. Then I called Leanna to share what I'd uncovered. "Holy crap," she responded. "Do me a favor. Scan them and email them to me, will you?" "Already on it," I replied. Once the scans were done, I returned everything as I'd found it, hoping she wouldn't realize the box had been disturbed. Back at the computer, I picked up one of the DVDs. Something in my gut warned me that watching it would bring pain. But I couldn't stop myself. My suspicions were right. The first few discs showed her in a motel room, entertaining various clients. I removed that one and tried another. It was the same. But the third had a different kind of content. Scenes with just one man at a time. In one, I instantly recognized the town's mayor. Another featured Spencer. Yes, that's Spencer. The final clip on the disc showed Haida with Meredith, her close friend. "God, that was incredible," Meredith said, catching her breath. "Yeah, it really was," Haida agreed. "Can you imagine how Merle would react if he saw this?" Meredith teased. Haida burst into laughter. "He'd probably need a manual just to make sense of it all," she joked, making Meredith laugh even harder. Then Meredith asked, "Seriously, though, how much longer are you going to keep this up?" Haida shrugged. "I'm not sure," she said. "As long as I can, I guess. Maybe a couple more years. Paradise. Bullied still has me under contract, for a while longer at least, until I make it through all 10 of the films. Merle doesn't know anything about it, and hopefully he never will." "Dad, could you ever see yourself going back to being with just one man?" Meredith asked. "I doubt it," my wife replied without hesitation. "Merle's a good man, but he just isn't enough for me anymore. Not by himself. Not after everything. Honestly, we're lucky if we sleep together twice a week now. Sometimes less." "You think he might be seeing someone else?" Meredith asked. "Not Merle," Haida said with certainty. "It happened once a long time ago, but that was it." "But seriously," Meredith said, her tone more pointed. "You know he's going to find out eventually. You haven't exactly been discreet. I mean, you were photographed in public with the mayor. What are you going to do about it?" "I don't know," Haida admitted. "Maybe I'll just confess and hope for mercy. Even if he leaves me or files for divorce, I'm not helpless. I've got money, I'll survive. It'll hurt, sure, but I'll be fine." "I doubt he'll miss me much anyway. I'm barely home these days." "That's for damn sure," I thought. As the recording played on, Meredith glanced up directly into the camera. "Turn the damn thing off, Greg," she said flatly. "Greg? Meredith's husband?" The footage ended right after that. I knew I'd have to have a conversation with Greg before too long. The question was, how much did he already know about what was going on? I ejected the disc, locked it up with the others in my desk drawer, and sat down at my computer, trying to process the mess I'd just seen. Eventually, I shut everything down, grabbed a beer from the fridge, and slumped in front of the television. I couldn't even focus on what was playing. It all just blended into meaningless noise. Then I realized I couldn't really see anything. I wiped my face. I was crying. I climbed the stairs and splashed water over my face at the bathroom sink. When I looked up, the reflection staring back at me was miserable, red-faced, puffy eyes. But one thing was clear. I had to end it. Divorce was the only escape from this. How could I stay with someone who didn't even want me anymore? Someone I clearly couldn't satisfy? Back downstairs, I made a quick sandwich. All this drama had left me starving. I thought briefly about going out, maybe for a drive, but I didn't have the heart for it. It was already 10 p.m. Time flies when you're miserable. I thought bitterly. Haida still hadn't come home. No texts, no calls. She had told me she'd be late, and I had a pretty good idea why. I opened Life 360 on my phone. Her location? Ribald. Figures. I shut the app and went to bed. A few hours later, the sound of the garage door startled me awake. The clock read 2:30 a.m. Perfect, just in time to ring in my birthday. Happy goddamn birthday to me. I wondered if she'd even thought about baking a cake or planning anything. Then I closed my eyes. I heard her footsteps come up the stairs and into our room. She came over and gently touched my face. When she pulled her hand away, I turned to look at her. She seemed sad. She went into the bathroom without saying a word. A little while later, she came out wearing a long nightgown and climbed into bed. She tried to curl up next to me, but I turned away, rolling to the edge of the mattress. She kissed the back of my head, then laid still. I thought I heard her quietly crying into her pillow, but I didn't care anymore. After a couple of hours, I could hear her soft snoring. That was my cue. I got up as silently as I could, slipped on my robe, and crept downstairs. I grabbed her phone from the charger before heading into my office. Just like before, I dug into her messages. There were even more now. A particular thread with Spencer caught my attention. "So how's that pathetic little loser doing?" he had messaged her. Clearly, she didn't appreciate that comment. "Quit calling him that," she told him. "Why not?" "Isn't that exactly what he is?" Spencer replied. Spencer typed again, then again, and once more. "He's not spineless," she countered. "Maybe not," Spencer said, "but he's still a lapdog. And that's because of you." "Don't keep bringing that up," she said. "Did you have a good time with him after we last talked?" Spencer asked. "No," she answered. "Good," he responded. "Are you heading on some cruise?" "A cruise?" she repeated. "What cruise?" "No one told me about any cruise." "Yeah, I am," she eventually admitted. "Merle's going to be confused," he said. "You don't need to justify it to him," Spencer told her. "Just say you're going. Word is the money's decent." "That's true," she replied. "You thinking of going?" she asked. "A bit too rich for me," he said, "but maybe—" "I hear they're already fully booked," she wrote. "Figures," he said. "Maybe I'll see you when you're back." "Okay, I need to get back to work," she added, closing the chat. TTYL, I needed to know more about this cruise. Would she actually take a trip like that and not even tell me? Or worse, did she expect me to just accept it without question? Things were spiraling. I looked around some more and spotted a message that looked like it had something to do with money. When I opened it, it appeared she had earned a bit over the course of the day. There was no doubt in my mind. I closed everything, put her phone back on the charger, and went upstairs. The next morning, Haida cooked breakfast like she always did. And like always, I ate what she prepared. She sat across from me, watching. She looked slightly thrown off that I hadn't greeted her with a hello or a kiss. "You all right?" she asked. I paused, chewing, and looked up at her. "Yeah," I mumbled, going back to my food. "Did you sleep okay?" she asked. "You seem off this morning." "Maybe being by myself all the time is catching up to me," I said. "Are you going to be around tonight or not?" "Sorry," she said. "Meredith and I have plans again tonight." "Right," I muttered. "You know, there's something else we should probably talk about." "Oh," she asked. "Do I need to make reservations or something now? Is there a booking agent I should be calling?" "Don't be ridiculous," she said. "Why would you think that?" "Oh, I don't know," I said, my voice heavy with sarcasm. "Maybe because you're barely ever here. You come home just to sleep, then you're out again. I have obligations too, you know," she said. "Sure," I replied, pushing back from the table. "I've got to head to work anyway." I grabbed my keys and jacket and walked out. As I left, I heard her say she loved me. I didn't answer. She was already gone in her own way. Later that day, after lunch, my phone rang. It was Leanna. "Hey there, little brother," she said cheerfully. "How are things at your place?" "Not great," I admitted. "Come over tonight," she offered. "Ron and I want to celebrate your birthday with you." "That actually sounds good," I said. "Is Haida coming too?" she asked. "I'm not sure," I answered. "It'd be better if she wasn't," Leanne replied bluntly. "John called earlier," she added. "He said he had something to tell me, so I invited him over as well." "That okay with you?" "Yeah, that's fine," I said. "What time should I come by?" "Any time after work," she told me. I'm planning to leave here around 4:30. All right, I'll aim to be there around then, I replied. We wrapped up the conversation and I went back to my day. I managed to get off work a bit early and checked the 360 app to see where Haida was. No surprise, she was at Ribald. Again. I sighed, shook my head, and drove straight to Leanne's place. Leanne and Ron greeted me at the door. She hugged me warmly, and Ron offered a handshake. It was oddly comforting, more warmth from my sister in 2 days than I'd felt from my wife in weeks. Ron handed me a cold beer, and we moved into the dining room. Dinner was already laid out. Leanne had everything ready. Just as she placed a steaming tray of lasagna on the table, the doorbell rang. Ron went to answer it and let John in. We all took our seats and enjoyed the meal together, followed by cake and ice cream. They wished me a happy birthday as I blew out the candles. Afterward, Leanne passed me a birthday card. It had me laughing, genuinely, for the first time in what felt like forever. Then John opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder. He handed me a report and began explaining while I scanned through it. I hate to bring bad news right after a great dinner, he said. It's all right, I replied. I knew this was coming sooner or later. I'll be honest with you, Merle, he said. Your wife is something of a celebrity over at Paradise Ball Eid, but there's something else you should hear. What is it? I asked. The club's organizing a 5-day Caribbean cruise exclusively for adults, he began. And the second it was announced that Flaming Red would be on board, the tickets vanished. He paused, then added, My contact at the club confirmed today that she was part of the last cruise. Leanne's eyes widened. Oh my God! Happy goddamn birthday, I muttered. When is this trip happening? I asked. The hostesses, that's what Ribald calls them, are flying to Miami this Friday, John said. The cruise sets sail on Saturday and returns Wednesday. He pulled out a poster and handed it to me. Garish red and yellow letters screamed across it, Sun, Sea, and Fun. Join Flaming Red and friends for Ribald Windjammer's first Caribbean cruise. A sleek schooner sailed across bright blue waves, and in the corner was Haida's beaming face. This the ship they're using? I asked. Yes, John confirmed. It's headed to the Bahamas. I think you can guess what'll go on during the trip. No need to explain, I said flatly. We also learned something else, he continued. They're filming another adult movie on board, titled something like Flaming Redhead in the Caribbean. And apparently guests who bought tickets will get to watch her perform live. I felt my stomach churn. I'm really sorry, Merle, John said quietly. It's all right, I replied. I should have seen this coming. I turned to Leanne. When's your friend back from Europe? In 2 weeks, she said. She as good as you say? The best, Leanne said firmly. She can't stand cheaters. Good, I said. As soon as she's back, I want to start the divorce process. Then I looked at John. Do you think you've gathered enough for your friends in Vice? I believe so, he said. I gave a nod. All right, let me know what I owe you. I felt confident I had gathered all the evidence I needed. We chatted for a while longer before wrapping things up. I'm sorry, Leanne said as I stood to leave. She embraced me like a sister would, and I gave Ron a firm handshake. If there's ever anything I can do, don't hesitate, she added. Thanks, Leanne, I said, and then walked out. By the time I made it home, I was drained. Unsurprisingly, Haida wasn't around, so I crawled into bed and was out cold in minutes. The smell of bacon woke me the next morning. I got ready for work and headed downstairs. Where were you last night? Haida asked as I sat down across from her. I called the house a few times, no answer. I was at Leanne's, I replied. She and Ron threw a birthday party. Her eyes widened. Wait, yesterday was your birthday? She looked stricken. God, I completely spaced. I'll make it up to you, I swear. Sure you will, I thought. Her promises meant nothing anymore. Don't worry about it, I said calmly. She gave a shrug. Just a heads up, I'm spending the night with Meredith. We're flying to Miami tomorrow morning for a little shopping trip. Really, I said. When did you plan that? We've been talking about it for days, she answered. I know it's kind of last minute, but she said there are some massive flea markets this weekend. Great deals and all that. Does this little shopping trip come with a 5-day cruise through the Caribbean? I asked. She blinked, startled. What? What cruise? I have no idea what you're talking about. Without a word, I reached into my briefcase and pulled out the cruise flyer John had handed me the night before. I slapped it down on the table. "This one," I said, "the one featuring flaming red." Her face went pale as she stared at the poster. I could almost hear the gears grinding in her head. I cut the act," I snapped. "You've been lying to me for years, haven't you, Red?" "I swear I don't know what you mean," she replied weakly. "Don't insult my intelligence," I said, voice hard. "Were you ever going to tell me about the abortion from 14 years ago?" She didn't respond, just looked away. I always wondered why we never had kids. Now I know why. I threw a stack of medical records on the table. "You had your tubes tied back then. Tell me, was the baby even mine?" Her voice dropped to a whisper. I don't know." She looked down. "I was sleeping around when you were gone. I don't know who the father was. I didn't want to risk raising a child that might not be yours. I should have told you. I'm sorry." "Yeah, you should have," I said coldly. "Tell me something. Were those men paying you for your company?" Her eyes flashed with hurt. "How can you even ask that?" "Oh, please," I scoffed. "I know all about your career, the acting, the escorting, the whole operation. How long were you on the payroll?" She started shaking, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I started taking money for entertainment after the abortion," she said, barely audible. I closed my eyes and shook my head. "We agreed to an open marriage, didn't we?" she said. "Yes," I replied. "But open assumes honesty, mutual respect. You gave me neither." Her silence said everything. "You've lied, cheated, and disrespected me for over a decade. Tell me I'm wrong." I pulled a folded newspaper clipping from my pocket and dropped it beside her. It showed her laughing arm in arm with the mayor. "You slept with Rudy, for God's sake." She looked down, defeated. But then she lifted her head. "You're not exactly a saint either," she said. "No," I admitted, "I'm not. When we first got married, there was a brief fling I had with someone named Cindy. That was the extent of it. And you were aware. I told you everything. Since then, I've stayed completely loyal to you. But you've sunk to depths I never imagined." "How many men have you been with in the last 14 years? Thousands?" "Now look at you, living as both an actress and a prostitute. You're lucky the police haven't caught up with you yet. Were you ever planning to tell me any of this? What about your hidden account in the Cayman Islands? Or the stash of rare coins and expensive jewelry tucked away upstairs?" She stared at me, stunned. "You know about that?" she asked, wide-eyed. I gave a slow nod. "Yes, I know," I replied. "And I also know about you and Spencer, the so-called friend of mine. You two even hooked up at that pig roast my company held not long ago. You were barely 100 yards away from me. He wanted you to cut me off entirely, didn't he? Tell me, how many times have you been with him this month?" "I don't know," she murmured. "Maybe 5 or 6. 5 or 6 times," I repeated. "That's more than we've been together in the last month. Do you have any idea what it feels like to be seen as the biggest fool around? Do you understand how deeply you've embarrassed me? Because of you, I'm seriously considering leaving this town for good." She started crying, tears rolling freely down her cheeks, but I didn't care anymore. "You know, I've asked myself 1,000 times whether cheating is somehow acceptable in an open marriage," I said, my voice low. "And thanks to you, I finally have an answer. Maybe I could have handled a random one-night thing. But this? What you've done is so much more than infidelity. It's the complete and utter lack of respect. 14 years of deception and disregard." "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "If you want, I won't go on the cruise. I'll quit working with Rybald. I'll stay faithful from now on." I shook my head slowly. "No, you won't. Because you can't. Loyalty isn't something you're capable of anymore. This lifestyle, it owns you now. And anyway, our marriage, it's beyond saving. So go ahead. Enjoy your next rendezvous as a married escort. That's who you are now, isn't it?" "What did you say to Meredith?" I continued. "That I'm no longer enough for you? That I can't satisfy you?" "That's not what I meant," she wept. "Yes, it is," I said. "But honestly, it doesn't matter anymore. Just leave. Once I loved you more than anything, but I can't love who you've become. And I won't stay in a marriage filled with lies. Go. Keep doing what you're doing. Make your film. Sleep around. But know this, I'll be filing for divorce when you get back." "I don't want a divorce," she whispered. Frankly, I no longer care what you want, I said, echoing that iconic line from Gone with the Wind. I'm done. Goodbye. Don't be here when I return. I don't ever want to see your face again. With that, I gathered the documents from my desk, slid them back into my briefcase, and walked out the door to head to work. I had considered asking her about what she kept hidden in the kitchen drawers, but in the end, I decided it wasn't worth the effort. It didn't matter anymore. Whatever needed to be said had already been said. I was finished with her. That night, Greg, Meredith's husband, called me out of the blue. Merle, what's happening? He asked, his voice tense. Heida's a mess. She says you're planning to leave her. Is that true? It is, I replied calmly. But I thought you were okay with her being with other guys, he said, sounding confused. I tolerated it to a degree, I told him. But the deeper I looked, the worse it got. I found out things I never wanted to know. Lies, public shame, for years. I'm done. I paused, then added, Tell me something, Greg. Were you aware of her little ocean getaway? Yeah, he admitted. Actually, I'm working on a film crew. Meredith and I are going alone. We're heading out first thing tomorrow. How many of Heida's escapades did you record? I asked him bluntly. Plenty, he said, sounding tired. I've lost count. Meredith thought it would help if I got involved somehow, like I'd understand better. I see, I said. Well, that's more insight than I ever got. Have fun on your little voyage. And with that, I hung up. After the call, I grabbed a folder from the kitchen table. I flipped through the photos until I found a few showing Haida and Spencer together. I figured it was about time Spencer's wife saw what kind of man she was married to. I already knew where they lived, so I drove straight over. Spencer was just leaving the house as I pulled up, but I waited a minute to be sure he wasn't just grabbing something quick. Once the coast was clear, I pulled into the driveway and walked up to the front door with the pictures in hand. A woman in her early 40s opened the door. It was Christine, Spencer's wife. Merle! What a surprise, she said warmly. Spence just stepped out for drinks and a round of pool with his buddies. If you hurry, you can probably catch him at George's Tavern. That's all right, Christine, I said. I'm not here to talk to him. Got a few minutes? I asked. Of course, she said, stepping aside. Come on in. Would you like some coffee? That'd be great, thanks. She poured us both a cup and we sat down in the living room. What's going on? She asked. Everything okay? Not really, I told her. I handed her the photographs. I hate to bring this to your doorstep, but Spencer's been sleeping with my wife. For quite a while, as far as I can tell. Her expression shifted as she examined each photo. Shock, disbelief, and humiliation all playing across her face. Oh my God, she breathed. Where did these come from? I told her the whole story, from the photos to the messages I found between them. Everything. She was silent at first. Then I leaned in and gave her a hug. That was when she broke down crying. After a while, she collected herself and straightened up. You know, Merle, she said, voice shaky but composed, I've had my suspicions, but I never had anything solid. Have you spoken to Haida yet? She asked. I have, I said, and when she gets back from that cruise, I'm filing for divorce. I'd sue Spencer, I added bitterly, but this state doesn't let you file for alienation of affection. Not that it matters. He's just one of many. 14 years worth. I'm so sorry, she said. And to think he was supposed to be your friend. Some friend, I said with a dry laugh. Yeah, she sighed. Well, guess who just inherited cleaning duty for the foreseeable future? Thanks for coming by, Merle, she said. Will you be okay? I will, I replied, more for my own sake than hers. I should get going. Thanks for the coffee. Call me if you need anything, she offered. Will do, I said. She gave me a hug before I left. Don't worry, I'll be seeing a lawyer first thing tomorrow. The following day passed uneventfully. Unsurprisingly, Haida didn't reach out. Not a call, not a text, not even an email. Guess that told me everything I needed to know. So be it. That evening, as I walked out of the office building, things took a turn. Spencer was there, leaning against my car, glaring at me with rage in his eyes. You son of a bitch, he spat as I approached. Christine threw me out last night. Thanks for that. Well, what did you expect? I said coldly. Messing around with your friend's wife has consequences. I'm gonna beat the hell out of you, he snarled, throwing a punch. I dodged the first swing, but he clipped me with the second. The fight broke out right there in the parking lot, and I held my own. Fortunately, a security guard witnessed the scuffle and alerted the police. Minutes later, 2 squad cars pulled up. 4 officers stepped in to break it up. After reviewing the surveillance footage and taking our statements, they cuffed Spencer and hauled him off to jail. I'm not through with you yet, you bastard, he shouted as they shoved him into the back seat of one of the police cars. I headed home afterward, making a quick stop to grab a burger and some fries. That night, I turned in at my usual hour, 9 p.m., and slept without interruption. The following morning, I grabbed a few trash bags and began gathering up everything Haida had left behind. Clothes, shoes, makeup, toiletries, the works. It took 3 oversized bags to fit it all, which I dragged to the garage so she could collect them the next time she decided to show up. That evening, I thought about going out for a couple of beers, maybe 3, but in the end, I stayed in and enjoyed the silence. I figured I might as well start getting used to life on my own. On Sunday, I pulled out the old mower and trimmed the lawn. That simple task took up the better part of my day. Monday evening, on my way home from work, something on the TV caught my eye. I sank into the couch and turned up the volume. This just in, the anchor announced. Flaming Red, a well-known exotic dancer and adult film performer, is presumed missing at sea, along with 100 passengers and 35 crew members of the cruise ship Mirabella. The Coast Guard had confirmed the ship went down in a storm somewhere in the Caribbean, late Sunday night or early Monday morning. No bodies had been recovered so far, though salvage operations were ongoing. The anchor continued. Flaming Red had been frequently spotted with Mayor Rudolph Burns, who had publicly denied any romantic involvement with her. The cruise was hosted by a local club just north of town, which had organized a 5-day adult getaway billed as Sun, Sea, and Fun with Flaming Red. The vessel was expected to dock back in Miami on Wednesday. Jesus, I muttered. I flipped the channel, only to find another station running the same report. I went online and found multiple articles repeating the same grim details. It took a while for the reality to sink in. There wasn't any confirmation that Haida had been on board, let alone that she was dead. Still, no matter how furious I was at her, I never wanted anything like this to happen. I called Leanna. "You've seen the news?" I asked once she picked up. "I have," she replied. "They haven't found anyone yet. Are you okay?" "I'm still trying to process it," I said. "This isn't what I wanted." "I know," she said gently. "Let's wait and see how the search goes, what the investigation uncovers. Maybe you should come stay with Ron and me for a couple of days?" "No, I'll manage," I said. "But thanks." "Okay," she said. "Would you still go through with the divorce if she turns up alive?" "Absolutely," I said without hesitation. "That's what I figured," she replied. "Try to rest and don't torture yourself thinking about it too much, all right?" "Sure," I told her, then hung up. The next few days were rough. I couldn't stop watching the news, hoping for some word about Haida, but there was nothing. I even tried locating her with the 360 app, came up empty. Out of desperation, I contacted Rye Bald and got through to Devin, the general manager. He remembered me from the Sunday I'd stopped in. "I'm really sorry, Merle," he said. "I haven't heard a thing, but if I do, you'll be the first to know." "Thanks," I said, and ended the call. Not long after that, Leanna gave me a ride over to Meredith and Greg's so I could pick up Haida's car. I noticed a stack of mail gathering dust on the front steps. Clear no one had been there for quite a while. It had been nearly 5 months since I heard from anyone, but I didn't let myself wallow. When I wasn't occupied with chores around the house, I spent time reflecting, really thinking things through. I wasn't even 40 yet, still decent looking. My hair was full, my body still in good shape, and, well, nothing was broken in the bedroom department. The idea of having a child resurfaced, something I hadn't seriously considered in a while. If I met the right woman, I thought maybe it wasn't too late. Somewhat sheepishly, I admitted to myself that my past temptations toward infidelity probably stemmed from how young Haida and I had been when we tied the knot. If I ever remarried, I'd insist on full fidelity. I had no interest in repeating the disaster of my relationship with Haida. One afternoon, I arrived home to discover a letter waiting in my mailbox. It was from a man named Alan Hastings, an attorney at law. The letter urged me to contact his office at my earliest convenience regarding the estate of Hyda White, also known as Flaming Redhead. I phoned the number listed and scheduled a meeting for the following day. When I arrived, Alan rose from behind his desk and greeted me with a reserved smile as his assistant showed me in. Once she had left, he motioned for me to sit down. "My condolences on your loss," he said solemnly. He explained that about 4 months earlier, officials had concluded that everyone aboard the Mirabella was lost at sea. Since that time, he told me, the legal process surrounding my wife's estate had been underway. He handed me a check and asked for my signature. Glancing down, I saw that it was made out for $1.5 million. "Sorry, Alan," I said, confused. "I recently saw a bank statement showing she had over $4 million. Where's the rest?" "Taxes," he replied with a slight shrug. "No," I said. "Her account wasn't large enough to incur inheritance or estate taxes." "I can only tell you what I know," he said. "Her federal taxes were already covered. That amount reflects what was left after recent expenses, which were minimal." He mentioned that she had also owned a rare coin and a few necklaces, now collectively valued at around $1 million. "I know where those are," I told him. "Excellent," he said. "She left those to you, just like everything else in her estate." He then handed me an envelope bearing my name in her handwriting. "She wrote this for you just before she boarded the cruise," he said. "I haven't read it, so I don't know what it says. I didn't want to read it while he was watching, so I slid it into my pocket." "I'll read it later," I said quietly. We went through the remainder of her will. I signed where he directed, and when we were done, he closed the folder and handed me my copies. "I truly am sorry for your loss," he said once more. "Will you be holding a memorial service for her?" "No," I said flatly. He looked taken aback. "I see. It's just, most people do. You don't understand. We didn't exactly part on good terms." "I get it," he said, nodding. "Honestly," I added, "part of me still can't believe she's really gone." "That's understandable," he said gently. "You two were together for what, 16 years?" "Yes." "Have you considered talking to a grief counselor?" he asked. "I can give you a few names if you'd like." "I'll think about it," I replied. "Thanks, though." We shook hands, said our goodbyes, and I headed back to the office. Once I was alone again, I pulled out the envelope Alan had given me and opened the letter inside. "My dearest Merle," it began. "Yes, that's me," I thought, and kept reading. "If you're reading this, then I'm likely no longer alive. I want you to know that I've always loved you deeply, and I'm truly sorry for how everything ended between us. I know it might be hard for you to believe that. I understand. I've been dishonest with you for a long time. You've probably figured it out by now. I've been with other men for the entire duration of our marriage. At first, I justified it by reminding myself that we had agreed to an open relationship. I told myself it was harmless, that it wouldn't touch what we had. I should have known better, but the truth is I enjoyed it. Then I got pregnant. It happened after being with multiple men, and I couldn't be sure who the father was. I knew you wouldn't want to raise a child that wasn't yours. So I made a choice, one that was legally mine to make. I had an abortion while you were away on one of your trips. I paid in cash to ensure you'd never find out. And after that, I had my tubes tied so it wouldn't happen again. Not long after, someone mentioned I could make good money doing what I was already doing for fun. And I thought, why not? So I started taking the money. Yes, I was fully aware that what I was doing broke the law, and I had to stay sharp to avoid getting caught. There were several close calls where I almost slipped up. Still, you know how good I am at making money, and that's exactly what I kept doing. In the beginning, I stashed the cash up in the attic, but before long there was just too much of it. Taking it straight to the bank was out of the question. It wouldn't have taken long for the bank to start asking questions, and I knew they'd be required to report any large deposits. So instead, I started buying jewelry, necklaces, and collectible coins, thinking they'd gain value over time. I kept operating like I always had, slipping out whenever you were gone and hiding more money above the ceiling. But when you stopped traveling for work, I needed a new excuse to leave the house regularly. I couldn't exactly tell you I needed to be out 3 or 4 times a week without raising suspicions. I was still always on the lookout for bargains I could flip for profit, And that's what led me to pick up some shifts at Paradise Bald. Remember when I told you I was volunteering at the homeless shelter? At first, that was true, but later it just became my alibi, along with those supposed evening shopping runs with Meredith. By then, I was out of the house 3 nights a week. You can probably guess what I was really doing. Once I landed a position at Rybald, the general manager, Devin, proposed that I work as a freelance contractor. He even helped me with the documents and connected me to someone who helped me open an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Most of the attic money went into that account. From that point on, things started escalating. And no, it wasn't just 2 state senators I got involved with. It was 3 senators, plus a governor and even a sitting congressman. Seeing this written in her letter stung. I didn't find any of it amusing, but I kept reading. Later, Devin came to me with a new idea: films and photo shoots. He said they'd boost my income and raise my profile in the industry, no pun intended. I agreed. The deal was for 10 films over 4 years, with quarterly payments. By that point, I had already done 5 and the money was rolling in. I became increasingly brazen, less secretive about my activities. Spence definitely played a part in that shift. He thought it would be amusing to humiliate you publicly. And honestly, I eventually started to agree. I'll admit it. I lost a lot of respect for you during those months, and for that I am truly sorry. You worked tirelessly to provide for us, and all I did in return was indulge my selfish impulses and profit from them. Do I have regrets? Yes. Strangely, I don't regret all of it, but I do regret what I did to you. What breaks my heart most is never giving you the child you deserved. You would have been an incredible father. So why am I writing this now? I don't even know. Something in my gut tells me something bad might happen, and I want you to understand why I did what I did. All I can hope for now is that someday, somehow, you'll find it within yourself to forgive me. If I were in your shoes, I don't know if I could. But I've always believed you were the better person between us. Please believe me when I say I love you. She signed it simply. Your loving wife, Haida. I folded the letter, slipped it back into the envelope, and dropped it into my desk drawer. It was hard, nearly impossible, to believe she'd truly loved me. Could I forgive her? And even if I could, why should I? She was gone. Wasn't she? I got back to my usual routine, but a few days later, someone unexpected showed up at my office. Alice Hastings. My secretary knocked and said someone was waiting to see me. Let her in, I replied. Alice walked in, tall, lean, dressed in a crisp business suit. I stood, shook her hand, and offered her a seat. What can I help you with today, Mrs. Hastings? I asked, noting the rings on her fingers. I'm with First Fidelity Life Insurance Services, she said. I'm here to deliver a benefit payout. A payout? I asked. I don't have a policy with you. No, but your wife, Haida White, did, she explained. It was through her employer. I see, I said. I didn't realize she had a policy through work. She did, and she named you as the beneficiary, Alice said, opening her briefcase. She took out an envelope and passed it across the desk to me. I opened it. Inside was a check for $2 million. This is real? I asked in disbelief. Yes, she confirmed. The original policy was for $1 million, but it had a double indemnity clause. Since her death was ruled accidental, more precisely due to a natural disaster, you're receiving twice the amount. She handed over a set of documents for me to sign, which I did. Is there anything else? I asked. No, she said. I just wanted to make the delivery personally. Please accept our deepest condolences for your loss. Thank you, I replied, for both the check and your kind words. She gave me a polite smile, stood up, and we shook hands once more. After she left, I lowered myself into my chair and just sat there. I stared at the check, slowly shaking my head. And just like that, I thought, there's more. $3.5 million, plus a rare coin and some necklaces that easily added another $1 million. I found myself wondering what curveball life might throw at me next. Time kept moving. It wasn't exactly joyful, but at least the chaos faded once Haida and Spence exited my life for good. Liana, on the other hand, took it upon herself to become my personal matchmaker over the following couple of years. She introduced me to a steady stream of women, charming, intelligent, and fun. I enjoyed their company and even found fleeting chemistry with a few, but none of those connections ever really caught fire. That changed the moment I met Robin Carson. Robin was 36 and recently divorced. She'd walked in on her husband with another woman. That detail struck me as oddly significant. A few years earlier, I might have shrugged it off. But now I felt a weight in my chest, a sort of remorse on her behalf. I shared my own past with her, and we had a long conversation about trust and monogamy. "So you're not exactly a fan of open relationships?" I asked, testing the waters. "Absolutely not," she said firmly. "If that's what you're into, then stay single." Her response gave me pause. I thought it over and realized she had a point. "You know what? I think I agree with you," I said. We clicked naturally and continued seeing each other for another 6 months. Then I asked her to marry me. She let out a joyful squeal and threw her arms around me. A little more than a year later, we welcomed a healthy baby boy into the world, Robert. As I cradled him, I felt something settle inside me. This is how life is supposed to feel. Epilogue, 26 years later. A woman sat alone at a seaside table, tablet in hand, gazing over the ocean. She had just finished reading an article about the man she once called her husband. The piece reported he had stepped down as CEO of a global fast loan corporation. He was now a billionaire, and he and his wife of over 20 years were preparing for a luxury cruise around the world. Their son, Robert, had recently graduated with honors from the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland, and now served as a Marine Corps officer. A single tear slipped down her cheek. That should have been my son. That cruise should have been mine. But she had traded it all, for attention, for glamour, for a fleeting sense of power. The man she betrayed throughout their 16-year marriage looked happier now than he ever had with her. Worse yet, he hadn't lost his charm or looks. She clicked play on the video embedded in the article and watched them, her ex and his wife, standing together. The love between them was unmistakable, mirrored in their every glance. Once she and Merle had shared a bond like that. A journalist off camera asked him about the secret to his success. "Honesty, loyalty, and the love of an extraordinary woman," he replied with a soft smile, looking over at the brunette beside him. She choked back a sob and ran her hand across the screen. What was I thinking? How could I have been so foolish? It had been 26 years, 26 long years since the Mirabella went down. Everyone aboard had seemed doomed, but not everyone perished. Haida White, known to the public as Fire Red, survived. The infamous escort married and adored by millions. That night haunted her still. She remembered snatching her purse as the ship tilted violently. She had barely made it to one of the remaining life rafts. She saw Meredith, her friend, trapped below the surface, mouth agape, eyes wide in terror. She tried to grab her but couldn't reach in time. For days, she crouched beneath a tarp on the open sea, freezing, soaked, and helpless. She heard helicopters overhead, but none saw her. The screams of the dying haunted her ears and mind. Every time she tried to sleep, she saw Meredith's final, desperate stare. She had no illusions about being saved. A part of her even believed she didn't deserve to be. There would be questions, painful ones, about what she was doing in the deckhouse that night. About how her presence there had distracted the helmsman long enough to miss the warning signs. Out in the middle of nowhere, she realized, those lives were on her. And someday she'd have to reckon with that. The raft held only minimal provisions, a few canned rations and a small flask of potable water. It kept her alive until a fishing boat finally spotted her. The captain told her they were heading for Georgetown, Grand Cayman. She knew exactly what that meant. Her bank was there. Perfect, she thought to herself. They had given her food, clothing, and shelter until they arrived at their destination. Once there, she offered the captain a generous tip, several $100 bills she retrieved from her wallet, and asked him how to get to the nearest bank. Fortunately, her passport had remained in her handbag, allowing her to withdraw funds from her account to cover upcoming expenses. Just over 2 months and $75,000 later, Haida White, known in certain circles as Fire Red, ceased to exist. In her place stood Anita Garrity, a freshly minted immigrant from Boston. Her identification and documents were all expertly forged, convincing enough to pass the examination of even the most diligent local bureaucrats. She bore no resemblance to the woman who had vanished from her former life only weeks prior. With a cashier's check worth just over $2 million in hand, she made her way to Costa Rica. There, she purchased a small but inviting home along the Caribbean shoreline. Since then, she had lived a quiet, unremarkable life, keeping occasional tabs on the man she once called her husband. Part of her still wished he would search for her, track her down and say he forgave her, but that hope was never fulfilled. The authorities had long since ruled the Mirabella incident as a tragic storm at sea. All crew members were declared dead, and she, by extension, was officially among the lost. But she knew the truth rarely stayed buried. Eventually, she believed it would surface, so she stayed hidden. Life in hiding, however, came with its burdens. Every time she shut her eyes, she relived the horror. Her friend Meredith crying out for help as she slipped beneath the waves. 8 months after the government's public statement, word reached her that Paradise Bold had been raided. The infamous club had been shut down for good, and multiple arrests followed. By then, of course, the persona known as Flaming Red had been replaced, reimagined as a younger, flashier blonde version of her former self. Time passed, and the memory of Red faded into obscurity. She also read about Spencer's short stint in county jail. Upon his release, his bitter wife had exacted revenge, leaving him bankrupt and broken through divorce. She never heard another word about him. Eventually, Rudy was removed from his position in disgrace. Meanwhile, the governor and state senators with whom she had once mingled retained their seats in the election. She carried on with her reclusive existence, doing her best to remain invisible. Over the years, she grew close to some of the locals and became fluent in Spanish. Occasionally, she mingled with other expats, but never formed deep connections, always wary that someone might recognize her face or remember her name. The nightmares never stopped. In fact, they intensified. Meredith began appearing in them more vividly, calling her name and urging her to come join them. More than once, she considered ending her life with a bottle of sleeping pills. Somehow, each time she found the strength not to. Then came the diagnosis, a rare and aggressive form of cancer, untreatable and terminal. The doctors gave her 6 months, at best. True to her nature, Anita, or Haida as she truly was, began preparing for the end, determined not to spend her final days wasting away in a hospice. She would die as she had lived, on her own terms. She powered down her tablet and reviewed the documents spread out before her one last time. Everything appeared in order. She signed the final page. Next, she wrote a note to Lupe, a 40-year-old local woman who had become her one true friend over the last 15 years. She knew Lupe would drop by within the next day or two, as she often did. "Lupe," she began, "I've gone to see old friends I haven't visited in many years," she wrote in her best Spanish. "Because of my illness, I won't be returning. Thank you for your kindness and friendship. It has meant more to me than you'll ever know. The house and everything in it are yours now. I've also transferred the remaining funds in my bank account to you. Please give my love to your beautiful family. With love, Anna." She placed the letter and all the signed documents where Lupe would easily find them. Though the pain racked her body, she forced herself toward the dock, where a small wooden motorboat waited. She had already double-checked the supplies on board. Gasoline, check. Drill, check. Diving weights, check. Tequila and sleeping pills, check. Her plan was clear and deliberate. Once she reached the open water, she would strap on the diving weights, bore holes into the boat to let it sink, and take enough sleeping pills and tequila to dull the pain. Then she would let herself slip beneath the waves, never to be found. Untying the boat, she climbed in, turned on the engine, and pushed off from the dock. As the house receded in the distance, she took one last look. "I'm coming, Meredith," she whispered through tears. "I'll be with you soon,"